Greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I am Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzen. He's Aaron McIntyre. And yes, I am here. Risking my life for America first, yet again, putting it on the line for you, the people. Now, I had always intended to come in despite the consistent above 80-degree days. I just made up my mind on Friday after I left here. I like doing this with you guys too much, you know? So I'm gonna need to see one, I think. All right. But I got a little insurance call this morning, Aaron, when you informed me in the middle of my lifting workout that the AC was broken here in the room.
Yeah.
Here's why that matters. Because every year when we have had the WASP problem and I tell them they need to go where, guys, that they never go until I yell at them and make them go up there.
It's the AC unit.
Yep, every single time. It's happened remember the one year they found 6 live nests? When I finally yelled and screamed enough, after asking nicely, of course.
I remember it all.
Yeah, of course you do. Trust me, I remember it more than even you, all right? Well, I got to thinking, hey, we're going to find out right now if there's any activity up there right now, right? Because they've got to go up to the AC unit up on the roof and see what's going on. So
do they?
We shall see. All right. But the AC just kicked in literally about 10 minutes ago. All right. So, and we, of course, are here brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company with a flavor for every freedom-loving American. They make freshness their guarantee. They put the roast on date right there on every single bag, so you'll see that it is sent to you within days of being roasted. You want to get a discount, use my last name, Deace, as your promo code when you go to firstcup.com and use the promo code Deace. That's firstcup.com, promo code Deace. Promo code Deace at firstcup.com. You know that promo code there, by the way, will also get you a discounted subscription to Blaze TV to make sure you get all of the exclusive content we do for you, all of our shows on this entire network. Now it's just $8 a month. That's about what you're spending on one of those coffees you're buying every day. 26 cents a day, $8 a month. You can get a subscription to Blaze TV for $20 off the annual price when you go to blazetv.com/Deace. That's blazetv.com/Deace. Use the promo code Deace when you go to blazetv.com/Deace and get a discounted subscription for Blaze TV today. Blaze TV, unfiltered, unafraid, and on demand. All right, coming up here at the bottom of the hour, our good friend Bob Vander Plaats will be joining us as we get into the latest in pro-life politics. Starting with, is there any? Like we're gonna start there, okay? And pro-life, what is it? Okay.
If that's the most honest thing, that's all I care about. I am so tired of this nebulous whatever.
I have said for the last couple of years that the abolitionist movement is the future. They're going to win their argument in the end. It's the inevitable argument because we ultimately can't win the issue without the argument they're making. So they're going to win in the end. We're just getting to their tactical victory a little bit sooner maybe than I thought because I think the conventional pro-life incremental strategy is fairly boxed in and in a box of a lot of its own making. So we'll get into that and more with Bob Vander Plaats in the next segment of the show. Next hour, it'll be your turn to ask me anything, courtesy of our ex-users. We have some good stuff lined up, I hope.
We're ready to go.
All right, we will rock and roll on that in hour number 2, but let's rock and roll right now with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Unexpected. After tempering expectations about this weekend's trade talks in Switzerland with China, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says a lot more progress was made than expected and added that the Biden administration didn't do their own country any favors.
In January 2020, President Trump produced a template. We had an excellent trade agreement with China, and the Biden administration chose not to enforce it. The Chinese delegation basically told us that once President Biden came into office, they just ignored their obligations. This is a pause down to 10%. The April 2nd level for China is 34%. So we will be working to see where their final reciprocal number ends up. And And the negotiations are a combination of tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency manipulation, and subsidies of labor and capital.
At the White House this morning, President Trump went into more detail about what the talks with China accomplished.
And they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's going to be great for unification and peace. China will also suspend and remove all of its non-monetary barriers. They've agreed to do that. Well, they're very numerous. But again, to me, the biggest thing that came out of that meeting is they've agreed. Now we have to get it papered, but they've agreed to open up China.
This morning, Trump also signed an executive order that aims to punish Big Pharma for charging higher prices to Americans than to the rest of the world. Here's FDA Commissioner Marty Makary at the signing ceremony.
I've been a surgical oncologist at Johns Hopkins for 22 years, and I have seen patients suffer. We didn't take an oath to heal patients and then watch their life get ruined financially, with their home, mortgage, retirement, going down the drain with GoFundMe campaigns, raising money from church communities and synagogues and friends they haven't seen in 20 years to try to raise money for what? For a system where Americans have been getting ripped off by 10, 12, 15 times higher prices than we see in other countries. The fundamental problem in healthcare is that we've had non-competitive markets. And we can do little things around the edges, or we can transform those markets to competitive markets, and that's what this executive order does today.
By the way, Trump is leaving for his big trip to Saudi Arabia and other countries today. After pressure from Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week in Turkey. On their way back from a meeting in Ukraine with the the heads of state for Germany, France, and the United Kingdom let media into their train cabin when French President Macron awkwardly and hurriedly grabbed and hid what appeared to be a small baggie with a white powder inside. German Chancellor Merz appeared to do the same thing with a small coffee stirrer. Just bizarre behavior. The only person in that video not acting exceedingly strange is British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who this morning channeled his inner Donald Trump on the issue of immigration.
Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower-paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration.
Federal judge in San Francisco says the Trump administration has to stop firing federal workers. Back at the White House, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller says they're working on a workaround for judges trying to get in the way of their deportation program.
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch, the courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well, too.
Pope Leo XIV's brother in Chicago shared posts on social media calling Nancy Pelosi a drunk see you next Tuesday. Pope Leo's Florida brother has shared social media posts blasting woke ideology. Here's Pope Leo XIV himself a few years ago before being named a cardinal, not exactly speaking fondly of Pope Francis. He says, speaking in Spanish, quote, yesterday marked 10 years since Pope Francis's election. I knew Jorge Mario Bergoglio when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires as the Augustinian general. I'd met him several times. When he was elected, I told some brothers, great, thank God, I'll never be a bishop. I won't say why, but not all meetings with Cardinal Bergoglio were mutually agreeable, end quote. And finally, what's stopping you from being like this woman? For those of you listening, what we're watching is a woman who showed up to her school board's meeting to oppose the board's favoritism towards trans ideology.
So for us, I, Heather Fletcher, identify as a Board of Education member, and my pronouns are I won.
That's brilliant, and that's what happened while we were away.
Well done. Well done there at the end. We got into this for a lot on Friday, and time is going to answer this argument, but there has, on Pope Leo XIV, I guarantee I've not done as much research on this as Todd has, but I mean, I have probably done more than your average evangelical bear. Essentially, if you look at everything this guy, here's what I would say. If you look at everything this guy has said on virtually anything, other than immigration in the Trump era, this appears to be a profound upgrade. And then there is everything he has said on immigration in the Trump era that is profoundly disappointing. So, which case is it? We shall see. I would say I'm not as concerned as I was Friday when we taped our segment.
Agreed.
But I'm not going to act like I didn't see all those things either at the same exact time. Okay? So, but I just thought, since we discussed it so heavily on Friday, more information has come out. Aaron, you highlighted in your montage. I thought we should address it maybe a little bit further. You good with that for now? You okay?
Yeah, I mean, I feel much better about it now. Just a couple brief things. The Trump world, as it is, basically overlaps almost exactly the Pope Francis world in terms of the time that they've been on the stage, either presidentially or as Pope. So it's I don't think it's a coincidence that language may have changed in that. Furthermore, there is one video though where Pope Leo XIV speaking as Robert Prevost said that he has deep concerns about immigration going on the way that it is, and much like Starmer there said, like, this is, we can treat people in the image of likeness of God, but that doesn't mean we have to pretend that we don't have very big problems here. So it's almost like Megyn Kelly came out and flat out said, is it too much to ask that Robert Prevost's Twitter account was basically run by like a teenage intern or something like that? Because those 5 tweets just don't make sense in light of everything I've learned since then.
Nope. And what he does now as Pope will help us to make sense of it. But you're right. They do stick out compared to the complete body of work like a sore thumb. There's no question about that.
Right, and everybody is right to call attention to those. There's nothing wrong with that.
All right. The entirety of Aaron's montage, the final 2 clips there with Pope Benedict, Freudian slip, because that's sounding like Pope Benedict, actually, Pope Leo XIV and the brilliant school board member there. There's a theme here on each one of these, and that's the Trump administration essentially dictating terms of the debate on every single one of those issues. On offense on every single one of those issues. First of all, Stephen Miller is an absolute machine. An absolute machine. And they cannot utilize him enough on this. The 90-day China deal. So China has agreed to drop its tariffs on U.S. imports from 125% to 10%. China has agreed to leave a separate 20% fentanyl-related tariff in place. China has cut retaliatory tariffs to the U.S. from 10% to, or from 125% to 10%. So you'll have equivocal tariffs here, 10% both ways, and essentially a sin tax, for lack of a better description, on fentanyl-related materials and paraphernalia will remain in place of an extra 20%. They're going to keep this going for the next 90 days. That takes us through most of the summer. That would put us into August, essentially, an entire quarter to see how this goes. I've not checked in the last hour, but unsurprisingly, opening markets here in the United States were very favorable towards this deal. Scott Bessent, who continues to be number one in our homosexual Treasury Secretary power ratings. Okay.
Gosh,
Are we the only show, do you think, that has those, maybe? And there might be a reason for that.
This has been a wild swing in the last 4 minutes. So it turns out maybe the Pope's not communist after all, and here's our power ratings for homosexual Treasury secretaries.
I haven't got the update. Is that a list of one?
I think, well, out and proud. I'm guaranteeing it's not a list of one, brother. Okay, if we're just talking those that are out and proud, it's a list of one. But something tells me it ain't a list of one if you include people that are otherwise inclined. But just in all seriousness, just based on his profile, most of us on the right had him pegged, me included, as the most what you doing pick of all the cabinet secretaries. He has been fantastic. His messaging this morning on decoupling from China, I found that to be very interesting. He said that neither side wants a generic or broad decoupling, but that the United States desires a strategic decoupling. The United States desires to have more control over its medical manufacturing, its overall manufacturing. Okay, so let's start with that really quick. All the uncertainty of a few weeks and everything else we went through to get this deal and that messaging, was it worth it, or to be determined? Or maybe, you know what, we're off to a good start, but let's see how it works out.
Oh, it's all worth it, and it's proving what I said right about tariffs all the way back in the first term. The hard part about playing chicken is knowing when to flinch. And that's everybody loves certainty, and that becomes an addiction. The comfort is the addiction. Donald Trump says, enough of that, Doris. We're going to be grown-ups. We're going to play some high-stakes poker, and I think you're going to flinch. And he was right.
Do you remember my prediction on the Deace group about 2.5 weeks ago? I said by May 12th, we would have a pretty good idea of who's got the upper hand in the trade war.
Yep.
Well, it's May 12th.
It's May 12th today. Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you're China and you believe that you can withstand any pain, or that the United States is hurting itself and not really affecting you, you don't even give them the time of day. Regardless of who called for these talks over the weekend, I know there was some disagreement about whom came to whom first to initiate these talks, because that matters a lot to the Chinese government to save face, to make it seem like they're desperate and not us. But regardless of whom called for whom to meet this weekend, if you believe that long term you can withstand this, that America really isn't the biggest player, and that you can do business elsewhere and go along just fine, you don't even give one of your main, if not your main, geopolitical rival, you don't even give them the time of day. You freeze them out.
Right.
So I think, I don't think it's a rout. I don't think we're routing this tariff war. I think it's a win. And I think the strategic decoupling, you're getting back then to, I think, the recommended plan. I want to be careful with my words, from Stephen Mearns. He's
That's your guy.
Chair of the Economic Council of Economic Advisors. He came out with the user's guide for restructuring global trade. I can't remember, from Hudson Bay Capital. He came out with that in the aftermath of the election, and I think he spelled out a number of ways you could accomplish this. One of the ways that he spelled out is what we've seen over the past month. Another way is the multilateral approach, which is more targeted, not nearly the window smashing tariffs that we've seen over the past month. but more of a strategic and a long-term plan. And this is, I think we're getting back to that. So I think maybe what we're seeing here, hey, let's just bowl in the China shop. Let's crash some things real quick. Let's take what we can take in the short term. But I think we're getting back to more of the long-term.
He doesn't want a route. Donald Trump, just like in your montage when he talks about he wants peace, he doesn't want war. He doesn't want to. Donald Trump just wants to be like, can't we all be groovy and make money together? That's really his thing. So it's not about a route anyways. It's just about you were routing us, and that is not going to fly anymore.
Well, from an art of the deal standpoint, that's our show's official belief is that is essentially a patriotic version of art of the deal is essentially the heart of Donald Trump's demonstrated worldview. So, I mean, in any sort of strong-armed leverage, tactic negotiation, at times you're going to use very drastic language in order to move the Overton window to a place that if you get halfway there, and which it would have seemed radical before such language was deployed, now it seems rather reasonable and rational, right? Okay. So, I mean, even for 90 days, if Trump had just said, China, most favored nation status since the 90s, we have a great relationship with them. I'm just going to call him Mr. Xi. I'm sure we can maybe just do reciprocal tariffs of 10% and work this thing out. That's probably not going to get the job done, probably, right? No. We're going to have really hardcore language, and you're going to have to look that guy in the eye and think he might be crazy enough to actually hit that button, all right, before you're willing to take this kind of a deal.
Especially after they poisoned us not very long ago. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. We might be on the brink of our first face-to-face meeting between Putin and Zelensky. And at the hopes that this will happen, I will now identify Zelensky with only one Y. Or no, I'm sorry, actually there's two Ys, okay? But not the insulting moniker I have done over the last year plus, just to get whatever the hell this thing has been, okay, largely over with, all right? Optimistic about this, okay? Because it might even be easier to leverage the Chinese here, given how much they need our customer base, than it would be to leverage Putin here, okay? I think the Western European countries have seen the writing on the wall that the days of just blank checks and press releases with another $100 billion to Ukraine, every other Friday payday, that ended in this last election. All right. I think the question becomes, is Putin willing to take yes for an answer? I think that's actually who has to be discussed and leveraged now. I would have said the opposite with the Democrats in charge, but with Trump and his team in charge, I think this is now about is Putin truly would he be satisfied with Crimea is yours, walk away, we won't put Ukraine in NATO, and don't ever do this again, or we will? How you like them apples? Is he okay with that deal? Because that's pretty much the deal that's going to be offered to him. I'm confident.
Well, and it's not a deal in a vacuum. What's going on in China and elsewhere, and Sturmer saying what he's saying.
We're going to get to that in a second.
But these all things emotionally and psychologically work together. Where this train is leaving the station. The world as it was during Biden is clearly going to be different. I need to make sure I'm going out on advantageous terms.
I mean, these are massive paradigm shifts, yes. Todd. It's May 12th. I mean, Trump's been in office about 110 days. Okay, these are massive paradigm shifts that are happening already. One of them we won't have time to get to today, and that is the EO on the pharmacy drugs. We're going to do that in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/days, because there's a longer worldview conversation I think that needs to be had there.
It ties into Keir Starmer too a little bit.
Yep, but these would be massive paradigm shifts.
Yeah,
just by before we even get to Memorial Day of the first year in office.
I think it would be out of character based on all of that if he does not take a seat at this table. If Putin, I mean, really, he's been seeing things that people refuse to see. It doesn't mean he's a good guy, but he's just been willing to call BS for some understandable reasons. But those instincts would, I think, be somehow dead and gone if he's not willing to say, "This is a win for me."
It would be a massive win, no doubt. All right. Sturmer. I want to make sure everybody understands him talking about restricting legal immigration out loud would put him currently to the right of the Trump administration on this. Remember, this was the whole thing that got Vivek Ramaswamy in trouble over Christmas. This is why we have to have these high-skilled workers come in. Trump has said many, many times he's for more and more legal immigration. Now, I've always believed a lot of that is frankly a deflection. And the H1, those visas I think Trump is sincerely for bringing in what would be described as, quote, skilled labor from these other countries. But I don't believe he's for broad-based legal immigration. I think a lot of that has been a deflection for getting called racist. But now we have essentially the neo-Marxist Prime Minister of the UK. That messaging that's in that clip that Aaron showed us is currently to the right of the official position of the Trump administration. The restriction of legal immigration. In fact, I don't know any of the legacy Western countries. I mean, countries like Hungary talk like this, but I mean like the legacy Western countries, the countries that stayed, legacy West before World War II and then after, and did not fall to the communist bloc. I don't know of a head of state, and maybe someone in the audience can think of it, but I don't know of a head of state of any of those legacy Western powers that has use that kind of language, and here it's coming from the most left-wing administration that the UK has ever elected.
Yeah, that's why I don't trust it.
I wouldn't. I'm not. Well, I didn't say trusting it.
About, I just like this has been a self-evident truth for a very long time. Why now? And maybe that speaks to what I just. That's exactly what
I was going to ask you guys. So why are we doing this now?
There's so many things changing worldwide on this stage, and people are saying, if I don't fix this, I'm the one who's going to get left behind. I'm going to be the laugh track. But that doesn't mean you have the will to execute what needs to be done, because it's not about just stopping immigration. I mean, England has fallen. You need to deport people. You are the poster child for the death of the West right now, and those mere words aren't even close to enough to resurrect that place.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's happening right now, but it could be that Keir Starmer is more of a Bernie Sanders Marxist, because you'll recall about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, one of the platforms that Bernie Sanders was running on was immigration, actually. He was not exactly a border hawk, but he would actually talk about how immigration drives down wages for people. So it could just be as simple as that. He's just an old school Bernie Sanders Marxist.
Let's say this. I'm confident in at least saying this where Sturmer is concerned. If this is the kind of posturing the most left-wing government ever elected by the United Kingdom feels like it has to do, even if it's all a scam and all a lie, it speaks to maybe even a bigger vibe shift than we are understanding and acknowledging. Because we don't see the leftists in our country making any of these kinds of accommodations whatsoever. Instead, they went down to El Salvador to drink to have umbrella drinks with an MS-13 gang member. Okay, we haven't heard. I mean, I'm just telling you right now. If Joe Biden had ever said anything close to what Sturmer just said, I don't know that we win this last election. Honestly, okay. But they would not do any. Our leftists would not do any such posturing. I wonder, guys. It reminds me of what Daniel Horowitz's theory was about Sweden during COVID. Why was the most socialist country of them all the most transparent? And what was Daniel's hypothesis? That they've already got the leftists already have all the power there that they could ever want, so they don't want to destroy their culture anymore. Could that be maybe what's going on in the UK? They have all the power they could possibly want. There really is no Brexit's the spirit of Brexit is dead. There really is no right wing organized. I mean, what's this nuts who did Brexit is more popular here than he is over there, basically.
Farage.
Thank you, Nigel Farage. Could it just be that now they have total control? Maybe they don't want to wreck their culture anymore since they already got the power they wanted, like what Daniel said about Sweden during COVID. What do you think?
Well, I think vibe shift, you're kind of talking about it in a positive sense, and I wouldn't rule it out. I might say it in a negative sense. It may be even darker. It may be very, very close, based on intelligence they may have, that an open jihad is about to take place. A literal Islamic overthrow. I wouldn't rule that out.
That's the Tata I know and love. Just Vanta Black on a Monday morning.
There it is. Have a great weekend. Hope you had a nice Mother's Day. Muslim invasion next. Stay tuned. Friends, your generosity has been a lifeline for our partners over at Voice of Judah Israel. Your generosity just in the last year has delivered aid to over 1,200 vulnerable families in the Holy Land. And these are not just humanitarian efforts. These are divine appointments because they're not just doing good works over there, but they're doing the great work of the Great Commission, word and sacrament, the teaching and the preaching of the gospel as well. There's over 6 million Israelis who do not know Jesus as Messiah, another 3 million Israelis that are non-Jewish that also do not. Voice of Judah Israel is a messianic ministry right there in the heart of Israel. We've been proud to support and work with them over the last couple of years on the show, and you guys have been very generous to that end. And right now, your gift of just $35 a month provides meals for a family, creates an opportunity to share the hope that we have in Messiah, including just last month, an 89-year-old Holocaust survivor. You guys are the reason she had food on her table. All right, so let's keep this going. If you want to make that partnership official today, again, you can help a family for as little as $35 a month. When you go to vojisrael.org/Steve, that's VOJ for Voice of Judah, vojisrael.org/Steve. Again, that's vojisrael.org/Steve. And we're not just doing the do-gooder stuff here. That stuff is important. But this is really about the teaching, preaching, and discipling of the gospel back to the place that gave it to the rest of the world. vojisrael.org/Steve. Let's bring in our good friend Bob Vander Plaats here from the Family Leader. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really well. Beautiful week. No wasps. Temperature's up. Air conditioning's working. Life is good right now, right?
The air conditioning breaking was a benefit, okay? Because there's a tradition around here that if I ask nicely, nothing happens. If I scream and yell enough, eventually the ownership here will go up to the roof and check the AC unit and find all the wasp nest. I told them we're there all along, right? We've kind of done all this before.
We've done this.
Okay. So the fact that, because I was like, man, the weather's been over in the 80s. I was telling you guys on Friday, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it in. And when Aaron was like, well, the AC's broken, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. That means they'll be up on the roof, and we'll see right away if there's any wasp nests that are active up there right away. We'll figure it out, right?
We'll be okay. It's a blessing.
Indeed. All right, so let's get to it. All right. Let's talk pro-life politics. What is it? Where's this going? What is the plan right now? Is there one?
Well, I think there is one. And I think right now what you have is you have at least a Speaker of the House. I know there's been plenty of hits on Mike Johnson, but right now he is...
Many of them self-inflicted, but carry on. Yes. Yes.
He's all in to defund Planned Parenthood in this reconciliation bill. And so I really believe that this
is the big, beautiful bill that Trump has been
the big, beautiful bill. But if you can defund Planned Parenthood, to me, I've always said that's the lowest hanging fruit for Doge is get that $700 million. And sometimes doing what's right also meshes with good politics at times. And right now, defunding Planned Parenthood because taxpayers do not believe they should be forced to pay for somebody's abortion. Mm-hmm. And so that's about a 70 to 80% issue.
Now, this has existed. This polling number has been there for like 20 years.
But we have tried to get something done forever, and you just can't get it done. And that's why I really believe right now, because of Trump, his administration, his ability to leverage, has the opportunity right now to get it done in this reconciliation package. I'm hopeful that in this slim a majority of Congress, because of some leaders being sold out to it, we might get it defunded.
It would require this. Mike Johnson, when I go back to when he got picked for Speaker a couple of years ago, and remember you and I were like, listen, I have a lot of relationships in this network of evangelical activism. You have even more than me, okay?
Sure.
I'm like, I've never heard this guy's name once. I go all over the country. Never heard his name once. Do you remember this conversation? We had it right here at this desk.
I remember the conversation.
We had it right here at this desk.
Well,
and I looked at you and said, surely, given the circles you run in, you get into the places I can't get into. So certainly you are very well connected and familiar with one Congressman Johnson. And your answer to me at the time was?
No. And now, to be fair with him, he was at Alliance Defending Freedom 10, 12 years ago when I was fairly new into this movement. So I probably wouldn't have known him a lot. But as a member of Congress, but I don't know a lot of congressmen. I barely know my own congressman, But I just don't know a ton of congressmen unless they're up there making a lot of noise like Chip Roy and others.
All right. And so the next time that he follows through on fighting for something will be the very first time.
Well, let's hope it's on this.
So this would have to be, and hey, not just because something's gone that way in the past, it's usually an indicator of future performance, but it's not a metaphysical certitude. But this would be something entirely unique from what we have seen from him in the past.
Well, but the thing of it is that this has got to be something that is not negotiated away. Mm-hmm. Because when you're dealing with these slim margins, it's easy to go, we will negotiate this away. This is a high priority issue for the pro-life community. It's a great polling deal, and it fits right with Doge. Get rid of this thing.
Not to mention this, I mean, they've been surpassed now by the Rainbow Jihad, so they're one of the biggest. But for decades, the baby killers were the biggest bundlers for the Democratic Party in the nation. Well, yeah. So Republicans have been funding their political opponents directly with taxpayer dollars this entire time.
Just the 2024 cycle, they spent $70 million to defeat Trump and anybody associated with Trump. So to me, that would be, you're either for me or against me. Well, they're obviously against you. So therefore, if it's transactional, then I should be against you as well during that. The other thing about Planned Parenthood today, Steve, that's the little known fact, they're becoming the leading entity for hormones to kids, transitioning kids, all that stuff. This is bigger than just abortions today. I mean, they've come out to basically just, we are going to rewrite God's created order. Right on your watch. We're going to snuff out human life, and then the human life he does give, we're going to say you're in the wrong body, and now we're going to give you hormones to transition this stuff.
So if this cannot get done, as it has not gotten done in the past, pro-life politics then goes where?
Well, I think what is you still comes back to the electoral, right? So you have a midterm election, and you have a lot of the congressmen, especially in Iowa. You have one safe congressional district, the 4th congressional district, but 1, 2, and 3 are all in the crosshairs. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on this stuff? Are you going to defund it? What was your vote on that issue? Were you part of the reason that it didn't get defunded? And every congressional race across the country should be looking at this. But also you have key gubernatorial races. We got one here in Iowa coming up that you and I have talked about last week. But where are they on the life issue? Iowa's becoming a very pro-life state, heartbeat bill, all that. Right at conception, life at conception is now being debated in the Iowa Capitol. Those are things that Chuck Hurley and Danny Carroll, two of our stalwarts, would have thought that would have never gotten done in years past.
I mean, to me, I don't know what the future of the conventional, incremental, pro-life activism movement, industry, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what future it has if it cannot do this. I mean, at this, because if you can't do this, then you're saying to people, but we need you to go vote for the very Republicans who couldn't do this for you when they had the chance, so that they can have the majority and not do this for you again. Okay, you can only keep doing that to people so many times, and I am approaching the point where, I mean, people like me, if we run for office, we're going to get saddled with the most based pro-life language and everything anyway. So might as well just own that and get the benefit of it rather than just take the hit for it, particularly because the conventional incremental political lobbying group is putting no pelts on the wall at all. There's no trophies anywhere to be found.
And no matter how nice you say it, no matter how nuanced you are on the issue, they're going to spend $70 million to defeat you.
Correct.
So there's no political win to say, you know what, I'm not going to be pro-life. And the thing is, and I look at President Trump right now, he got a big win today with China and the tariff deal, the market's rebounding, people excited. That base is now going, this guy may know what he's doing, okay? You now give the base of the base a pro-life victory like defunding Planned Parenthood. You just excited this base for the 2026 midterms. I believe that happens.
Where do you think the 4 Republican members of Congress that we have in our state are on this?
I think 3 of the 4 for sure would be defund Planned Parenthood.
Who would the one that you're not sure about?
Miller Meeks. She's been, a little bit dances, and when I say that, she has voted with us right on the issue. I think if she sees that it's going to get defunded, she'll vote with us. But I believe she also takes a look at her district going, I'm in a tough district. But back to your point, they're going to spend all this money to defeat you anyhow. Why not own it? And that you stand for a culture of life. And she's a doctor.
All right.
I would hope I'd say 4 out of 4.
You mentioned, we talked about it a few minutes ago. You mentioned, and what we were just discussing, the deal announced with China this morning. It's a 90-day pause on the tariff war. Equivocal tariffs, 10% both sides.
That's a huge
down
win.
from about 120% both sides to 10% both sides. China will agree to keep what I'm kind of describing as a sin tax in place, which is a 20% extra tariff in place for fentanyl-related materials, items, essentially, et cetera.
Sure.
Essentially a sin tax. So that punitive tax will remain, or tariff, Freudian slip, will remain in place. But for the next 90 days, tariffs between both countries will go down to 10%. Scott Bessent said this morning, the Treasury Secretary, that the Trump administration does not want a broad decoupling from China, but does seek a strategic decoupling, that it wants to have more say-so over its own manufacturing base, as one example. So your thoughts on how big of a win is this?
I think it's a huge win. One is he got China at the table. I talk to people all the time. We gave Trump his first stage in Iowa in 2013, and he was talking about China back then. They're just laughing all the way to the bank. And so what he's doing, he's showing that, I'm willing to deal, but I'm also going to support our own manufacturing base here in the United States. And so when there's a strategic decoupling, I think what he's saying is we're going to start manufacturing this stuff here, not just be beholden to it over there.
All right, we have some more news. We talked about this at length last week, so I don't know that we have to necessarily bore the audience with another 20 minutes on the Iowa governor's race, as important as it is.
Sure.
It'll be one of the most high-profile governor races in the country because we are losing one of the absolute, if not the absolute best governor in the country, in Kim Reynolds. All right, so the Rob Sand announcing this morning formally what has been a hidden secret, that he will seek the Democratic nomination for governor. You had some thoughts on the way that he is being presented and rolled out.
Well, first of all, the Des Moines Register. Now, the Des Moines Register, I'm not sure how many people read it anymore, but his base reads it.
Not everybody that votes in the Democratic primary is the Des Moines Register reader, but every Des Moines Register reader is a Democrat primary voter.
That's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
Huge article. And what he's saying is that, listen, I'm neither Republican or Democrat. I'm right or wrong. It almost sounds like a Steve Day show. It's not about right or left. It's about right and wrong. And he's saying, I love to hunt. I love to fish. I think people make too much of a case about all the differences that we have versus about what brings us together. The reason I bring him up, he is the type of candidate that the Democrat Party is looking for to highlight. He'll be very formidable. Iowa, Steve, as you all know, we went from a very blue state to purple state to a deep red state. Mm-hmm. They would love to get this seat back into their hands. He's a guy that's won statewide. He's going to have a lot of money. I think his campaign is going to be nationalized. I think at minimum, it's one that your listeners really want to watch all of the developments that are going to take place in this Iowa gubernatorial race. To me, again, I think it is a terrible idea to run a member of Congress against the kind of figure that you're talking about. And I think you have to run somebody against what... I agree with you that this is that Skynet has adapted, and this is, even though he looks every bit as dorky as Tim Walz, he's younger. The presentation is way more sophisticated. Like they've learned some lessons of what happened before. Okay, and again, we have no idea what the environment will be at this time next year. I will tell you, I'm more optimistic about the environment next year based on some of the major news. The things we were just talking about. You bet.
The tariff settlement, bringing Zelensky and Putin to potential face-to-face meetings here soon to end that war. Those are things that would go a long way into a more favorable environment next year.
And if you defund Planned Parenthood, I mean, those are all things that lend to a favorable environment for us.
I agree with that, okay? And so I may have a different opinion 60 days from now than I do right now.
Sure.
But as it stands right now, brother, I think it is a terrible idea to run a member of Congress against somebody like that, because he will get to define our nominee by Congress and its inaction and unpopularity every single day. Okay? Yep. Now, maybe in 90 or 120 days, they're going to do some of the things that they haven't done for the last 90 and 120 days. And at that point, I might have a different opinion, but they have completely squandered the first 120 days. They've been in there about 10 days longer than Trump has been. They've completely squandered it. Cockroaches and root canals are literally more popular than the United States Congress is right now. Okay, I think that's a terrible idea to run a member of Congress against him.
And again, we talked about that last week. And I think the good news is that whether Randy Feenstra, he's the only congressional candidate that may get in. He has not decided he's going to get in yet. But if he does get in, he will have a primary, and my guess he's going to have to debate those issues in a Republican primary as well before it gets to a general. The thing is, what you said, there's some things that are happening on the national front and the international front. A lot of it's Trump's doing. You know, that Trump is kind of, he and his team are doing it. But those could be victories for him to, say, latch onto down the road as well. But today, you're right. The Congress doesn't have a high approval rating.
I mean, given what we've done on the ground since I should have mentioned him by name and I didn't, forgive me, you did. Since we're talking about Congressman Randy Feenstra, given what we've done here on the ground, I am really not concerned about Governor Randy Feenstra. We've moved the state so far to the right. He would be boxed in. Many of the great things we've done are at a statute level. He couldn't betray us on things even if he wanted to.
And even the legislature that he left is way more conservative today if he came back.
I am concerned about candidate Randy Feenstra. Yeah. Okay. And you have personal experience with what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And we could be, if these things don't work out, we could be looking like an environment like what you ran up against when you ran with Jim Nussle back in 2006. Yeah. I think it's a terrible idea to run a member of Congress.
There's an axiom in politics that I've used a lot. If you don't win, you don't govern.
Right.
You have to win this seat. In my opinion, this is a must-win seat.
You guys have any thoughts here in the final minute before we close it out on what Bob and I were just discussing?
Well, the fact that Rob Sand beat anybody and everybody on the Republican side to the punch on this means that I think both Feenstra, everybody else on the right, and Rob Sand agree with every word that's been said so far. And that's why they really have to be honest with themselves on the right. If I do this, I can't play the game and connect the dots the way I've been comfortable doing it before. Kim Reynolds and by extension, Bob, the work of the family leader, all that hard work that I've seen at the Capitol, my daughter's hard work, we ain't going back.
No. This is a red state, and so we're going to need a candidate to rise up to that moment and to make it keep it a red state. And to keep it a state that keeps moving to God's principles, its precepts, and be a shining light to the rest of the country.
Well said. Thank you, brother.
God bless.
All right, when we come back, it'll be your turn. You get to ask me anything. Stay tuned. We're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Ers and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve@stevedeace.com is the email address. DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget to please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review. If you like us, of course, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you prefer to podcast. Hit subscribe. And a lot of you have, by the way. I mean, we have literally gotten tens of thousands of those. So thank you very much. We appreciate each and every one. You can also hit subscribe, or if you listen via Apple, iTunes, follow. That will ensure that every time we drop one of these new episodes, it'll drop right there in your podcast feed as well. And thank you if you've done that for us too. Thanks to our friends over at SelectQuote. They are one of America's leading insurance brokers, nearly 40 years of experience. They've been around longer than Aaron has. helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You know, other life insurance brokers, they offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all templates that may cost you even more while covering you even less. But SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents, they work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs, and they'll do it in as little as 15 minutes. And if you're worried about pre-existing conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, no problem. Their partners will align you with carriers that provide policies for a variety of such things. They can help you out. All right. So get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/Steve. Go to SelectQuote.com/Steve today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/Steve. All right. You guys ready for some Ask Me Anything?
Yes.
All right, let's get to it. And of course, no topic is off limit. The questions this week come from our followers on the artist formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. Todd has selected the questions I have yet to see until Aaron, you hit me with them one by one.
We will begin with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, who says, why won't HHS Secretary Kennedy pull the mRNA shots off the market?
So I had... I discussed this for a little bit over the weekend on X in between family things. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. I think we might have even addressed it Friday late before we signed off, maybe, at least for a little bit, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
All right, because the thing is, it's not like they're not discussing the topic of vaccines as a whole. And whether they link to autism or not, everybody from the president to Secretary Kennedy to others have been hyping up greatly this study that is currently ongoing, that the results we're going to get from it are going to occur, I think they are saying in September, correct? And then there's this one issue. It is just I'm making an educated guess here, as someone that knows some of these people, but not all of them, and not really any of them that well. But is a fairly keen observer, I think, on how politics works and operates, and has been on the inside of a lot of those kinds of machinations and decisions. It is very clear that someone above them, or with ties to somebody above them, has, at least for now anyway, made this a verboten topic. Because it doesn't make any sense why they have been fairly bold and blunt on virtually everything else so far except this one. It doesn't make any sense. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what's unique about this one? Well, one of the things that's unique about this one is the current president of the United States is the one who signed the funding for the toxic genetic serums that have never worked and collectively have caused from day one more harm than they ever helped. And so, is it ego? Is it that, because we have seen Trump set ego aside here, particularly in the last few months of the campaign to win, in ways we had not seen him do before. Like even aligning with RFK Jr. in the first place and agreeing to that partnership. Okay. But that could still be it. Is it also, or maybe or that politically he would then get hit from the other side for being involved in something that was such a massive failure, and so they politically just think it's a lost leader, blah, 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 blah. I don't know the answer. Here is what I know. I think that almost all of the meltdown we have seen within Maha in the last few days, there are now even people accusing folks who are trying to stop chronic disease of being grifters. I thought that was like a major thing for you guys, was it not? So
stopping chronic disease?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. This is absolutely an overreaction. In terms of being anything tangible there, will say that for example, the whole organic food world, that once they found a market and more openness, there has been something that you might call grift adjacent in that world, where they keep pushing the boundaries of what organic actually is in order to make things more sellable, more profitable. So it's not as if this hasn't happened in this world before, but I agree with your sentiment that they turned the volume on this thing up to 11 too fast.
So since I'm operating under the assumption that there is someone above these secretaries that has made this a verboten topic, let me speak to whomever that is, politically speaking. All right, so let's just forget altruism, principle, data. Let's just forget all of that for a second. And because I'm just going to tell you, in most of these kinds of rooms, even on our own side, that's not the language that is often spoke.
Correct.
Okay. It's just sheer realpolitik. Okay. So then let me speak. Let me pull a Barbara Billingsley here, because I've been in these kinds of rooms. I've been in these conversations. I speak jive. So let me, and I'm also relatively new to all of this. And to this date, I'm not really even sure where I come down on all of this either. Okay. Like, I'm very thankful for ibuprofen. You know, there's a lot of innovations of the last few decades I'm very, very thankful for. Nebulizers as an asthmatic probably saved my life. Okay. You know, I'm sitting in a hospital as a 10-year-old, and I can't breathe. I was probably going to need something more than an essential oil rubbed on my chest. Just saying. All right. So I'm not even sure where I come down on a lot of this. I'm like reevaluating like everything after everything I've been lied to about the last 5 years. And I don't know anybody who's not a bought and paid for shill would not at least be in that position. I don't know how you come out of the last 5 years, at least not, unless you're a bought and paid for shill, or you're just in a cult, a literal cult, not even an expression, but a literal cult. I don't know how you wouldn't at least be second guessing and asking your primary care physician things you'd never asked him before, just to get some follow-up questions answered. All right?
Idolatry in the form of the magical power of vaccines is a hell of a drug, though, Steve.
I know. But it's very clear that in the places where this is getting decided, none of that matters. This is just all politics. So let's talk politically for just a minute here, okay? You're not, all of you in that White House, you're not there without the Maha group. You don't win without them.
Correct.
You do not win without them. At the very least, you certainly do not win the popular vote without them. I think that is 100% metaphysical certitude. We can maybe debate, whether, Trump could have gotten a narrow victory in the Electoral College, a la 2016 all over again without them. So let's to be on the safe side, let's not even overstate it or even risk overstating, because we don't have to. You 100% do not win the popular vote without them. And your path to 270 is way harder without them. Minimum, I think those things are true.
You're back in the margin of cheating, so you're absolutely right.
Minimum, those things are true. All right. So this is also not a coalition made up of a lot of people. For every Todd Erzin that's a native righty who found himself in this coalition, there's at least another one, if not multiples of him, who are in this coalition but are natively not with us comprehensively.
Right.
All right.
Correct as well.
So this idea of be a team player and we'll get them next time, all the BS we can feed our base with their mouths agape downhill as the BS comes running downhill. I saw a guy with a big following post on X over the weekend. Hey, I'm new to the right wing. Have Republican Congresses always been this ineffective, or am I just missing something? Did you see that? And that thing went like viral the weekend. And I'm like, same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Yeah. Okay. But see, we are all just vested and bought in ways that most of the Maha people are not.
They voted for Trump, and they absolutely expect a direct quid pro quo.
And they
undeniably so.
And they do. And you're mismanaging this coalition in the White House. You are causing division within this coalition, the kind of division that may undermine your own appointments before they ever actually get to do the kind of stuff that would make them worthwhile of continued Maha support. So here is what I suggest. The Friday before Memorial Day, in the ultimate Friday news dump, pull the shots. Put out a press release at 4:30 in the afternoon Pacific time, which is 7:30 in the evening Eastern, after everything's off the air and everyone's gone home. Put out a press release at 4:30, if not 4:59 Pacific time, announcing the shots have been pulled. Say nothing else. By the time we all come back on Tuesday, there will be 15 other things that dominate the headlines. If it were to come up, just have a statement prepared where the president simply says, we beat COVID, they were no longer useful, and I look forward to seeing what Bobby comes up with on his autism study in September, and just move on. Because everything that's going on with the Means, the Means family and everything else, and if you're with the Means, you're deep state and a CIA plot, and if you're against the Means, you're a bot that's been bought and paid for by Big Pharma. These folks that have been on this show on more than one occasion the last few years are right now on X as we speak, by name, lobbying these accusations back and forth against each other. That's not even a slight exaggeration on my part, is it?
No.
This thing's gonna. All of this, though, is a proxy for you didn't deliver for them on the number one thing on their list. And so what ends up happening when you do that to a base of people, one group will say, if you can't give me my number one thing, I don't care what else you give me. And there's reason to think like that. The other group will say, well, they didn't give me my number one thing, but they're still giving me 4 or 5 other things that no one else would. So I'm gonna hang in there. There's nothing. I couldn't sit here and criticize. That is really just going to be in the eye of the beholder. You people shouldn't be in that position. And someone in the administration has put you in this position, and it's their fault, not yours. Now, I'm not saying everybody should be very proud in the Maha group with how they're behaving currently. There's a lot of ass showing, okay? I mean, it's a twerkathon within Maha on X right now. Everybody's showing ass. Everywhere you could possibly go, put your pants on, please, okay? It's kind of embarrassing, frankly, for a guy who's relatively new to this and not bought into either of these dogmas on either side of this and is just wants to get some answers. I think I've probably texted you guys like 15 things this weekend. I'm like, what a joke this is, okay? It's embarrassing to watch.
But these have been the most principled and passionate people for decades now on any issue. I mean, you cannot find anybody, any other issue, and they're fed up.
And I don't disagree with that.
And you're not wrong either. I will just say one thing. There is one possible that I can think of good answer for this, and it would be awesome if it's true, that they're waiting long enough to pair pulling this off with the announcement of legal proceedings against Fauci or somebody else, and they're making sure that they have the ducks in the row on that. That would be incredible if that's what they're waiting for. I have no reason to believe that that's what's happening, but that's the only one good answer to your question I can think of.
That would be, one of the greatest, most pleasant shocks of our entire careers. That's the only benign, innocent explanation I could come up with. More likely, this coalition's being mismanaged into self-cannibalization. It's the White House's fault. Whoever in the White House is thwarting this needs to stop it, okay? And pick the Friday before Memorial Day, put out a press release at 4:59 Pacific time. After everybody's gone to bed and gone on vacation, we're pulling the COVID shots, and say nothing else about them ever again unless the media tries to mount something in response, which I don't think they will, because there'll be 15 other things that they'll want to talk about and try to blame Trump for beyond that, okay? But that's what I would do. And I think that this division within this very vital constituency will deepen and get worse and worse and worse until someone in the White House agrees, whoever's in charge of that, agrees and makes that maneuver. Next question.
We will go to J-Rod. If you had a son who was an FBS, this is some whiplash. Nevertheless, if you had a son who was an FBS D1 caliber football player, how would you navigate the current chaos in recruiting with the chaos around NIL to the transfer portal?
The number one thing I would say is let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. And operate with as much integrity and transparency as you possibly can. The worker's worth is higher. They've determined that this is a market and that you have a value that exceeds your scholarship, so there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of that, but to do so in a way that doesn't turn you into a clown. Don't become your own meme.
So you're saying we have a ton of terrible fathers out there?
That's 100% what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah. Good, because that's what's happening here.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you can just see this with the Nico case at Tennessee, where the helicopter dad got involved and everything else there. And then the family ended up taking a bath between a lot less money than they were going to get, and then the tax difference between California and LA. So that's the old Dave Ramsey stupid tax. Man, they paid it exorbitantly. And he went Lonzo Ball there and cost his son a hell of a lot of money out of his own pocket. Okay. And not to mention an inferior program. There's too many of those dads. All right. So, and I would also say this as someone that has hired employees, been an employee, started, worked at startups in media that for mom and pop shops, and then, ran this business for the last 14 years. Okay. Don't just look at the monetary figure. There were many years that I took a little less than my market value at WHO because I could negotiate for more vacation time, so time away from the show with pay to be a dad more often. Look at the full package and benefits. All the things that made you want to choose a school before you could get directly paid above board are still all in play. All right, what kind of caliber of human being is the coach of the sport you're going to play in? How strong is the alumni network if you don't end up going pro in the future? Because there's a 99% chance you won't. All right. Is that alumni network there to provide support and opportunity for you long after? I mean, all those reasons, okay, are still in play. This is not just strictly who's going to pay me the most money and everything else. All right. So I would advise my son to look at it holistically, and to also to let his yes be his yes and his no be his no. Don't be a clown. Be a man.
Yeah, any son I would raise, you don't deserve a single penny to play college sports in no way, shape, or form. And it's also not his decision, just his decision. You're my son. You're my daughter. You carry our name. We stand for certain things. And it's not for this ridiculous grift.
Okay. Steve, gird your loins for this one.
Okay.
Art Ham asks, who do you see as the top 5 Christian spiritual leaders of this country? Why? You can include the Pope if you want to.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. You want to go back to talking about NIL and the transfer portal?
Yes. One of the more, you know what, I'm going to say this, and it will probably cost me the book endorsement I'm asking for, but that stuff's never stopped me before. Okay. One of the most curious things I saw over the weekend was continually using John MacArthur, one of America's greatest Bible teachers of the last 50 years on the Protestant side of things. Maybe one of the greatest Protestant Bible teachers America's ever produced, frankly. Or at least, as it relates to these particular times of disappointment, church disappointment in which we live. But I don't agree with John MacArthur and everything. I just respect him. Okay. And immensely, in fact. But one of the most curious things I saw this weekend was there was a lot of sharing of John MacArthur's condemnation of Roman Catholic doctrine in my feed, as if he was an authority. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Do you guys know where I'm going with this?
Every day I know where you're going with this. Yes.
And I'm just like, it's like rain on your wedding day, and maybe even a free ride when you've already paid. Some good advice that you just can't take. A no smoking sign on your cigarette break. I
know.
Okay. You guys all understand, all of you that are doing this, you understand that you are essentially anointing John MacArthur into
they don't understand.
A place of papal-like authority.
Or they don't care.
Now the term here is papal-like, right? But again, we're all papists. It's just a matter of who our preferred pope is and how far our particular church is allowing him to go.
It's not unique to John MacArthur.
No, it's not. It's just not.
Pope Graham, Pope Dobson.
Correct. So I'm sure John, if he were here, and he's on the mend, it sounds like, which is great. If he were here, would absolutely not accept the moniker Vicar of Christ, even if offered. I am very confident in that. But understand, setting him up as some kind of presumptive alternative spokesperson collectively for a lot of people, as an alternative to a collective spokesperson for a lot of people, and that collective spokesperson was chosen by other people from their tradition, just like John MacArthur is being elevated and promoted from other people in his tradition. Should I continue on before we just lose absolutely every listener we have here? Or so that's my answer to your question.
It got even dumber today. Would you like to hear about it?
No. I think I've done enough damage just in the last 5 minutes to the show, and if I go any further, people are going to accuse me of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by which I purposefully tank this show so that I can have the excuse to then go around and run for governor, which I would love to do. Okay, and now the show's tanked. We're all out of jobs. You guys are screwed. I got nothing else to do. I might as well. No, I think I've alienated basically everybody. Everybody now is alienated.
Fair enough. Then check out my X feed later on today when you get time, because it gets dumber.
Okay, I just here's what I can tell you. If I put people on the show to specifically address spiritual themes, then you can take that as with the vetting we're capable of and the understanding that we have, I am confident giving that person a voice to speak to a lot of more people than they would otherwise reach on their own within the auspices of spiritual leadership. But I am not qualified to make that, bestow such titles. I'm not. I wasn't called to, nor would I even want that responsibility. It would literally take a voice from heaven for me to put myself in such an apostolic place. It's not my place to make those kinds of things. What I can tell you is we have an overall lack of spiritual leadership in America, collectively. I can tell you that.
On that topic, Country Squire wants to know if we can do Theology Thursday, Monday through Friday, and have 1 hour of political talk a week.
I get this a lot, and so what I don't know is are the fellow Theo nerds just more vocal, or are they that predominant in our audience? You know what I'm saying? Is it, like, are you guys like the NASCAR fans of our audience? There's not a lot of you. You're just the most rabid. Okay. Or is this an overall inclination into the audience? Because I will tell you, we've gotten in this last year, we've gotten even more directly theological, and I have seen very little pushback to it, so, but I will also tell you though, the lack of application more than is killing the church. And so I think the contemplative aspect of who we are and what we believe is very important. Okay? It's very important. But I don't think we lack for that right now. And I think there are numerous places of quality, regardless of your tradition, that you can go for contemplative pondering. And by the way, this matters. Okay? I mean, in any relationship, there needs to be some contemplation. How's the relationship going? Are we still as connected as we need to be? Those kinds of assessments need to happen, okay? But it's the application of those contemplations. That's what's lacking in almost all of our traditions. And so I am very adamant that is a void that with whatever sliver of the universe we have to do our best to fill that.
I will say, as a Catholic outsider looking in, I think you two gentlemen, my good friends, Steve and Aaron, are uniquely suited to doing things that others seem disinterested or incapable of doing. And that's at least part of this call, because you both have talked about, theologically speaking, the tendency of the, whatever you call, Protestant, conservative, orthodox side of things to be driving with their foot on the gas and the brake at the exact same time. And you two seem to understand that and voice that more than anybody is. And then specifically, Steve, the fact that you have had people on this show multiple times who are on both sides of this Protestant Orthodox civil war. I mean, all names that you know. And you both have voiced on air and then off air why you can see their sides and perhaps can be power brokers in bringing this thing together, which is why I call for this Protestant Council of Nicaea all the time. Both of your instincts on this are, I think, are necessary as a Catholic.
Well, praise God for that. Thank you.
Because a lot of times these are the conversations. We get called every single name in the book daily by both sides. You're sellout, weren't sufficiently loyal, every day. It's not that I'm like, man, I want to eject. It's these types of conversations.
I agree with that. I mean, I'll leave it there. I agree with that. Yeah, I think I've done enough.
That's not the right response. I'm just painting a picture of how frustrating this can become. Blue Jay says, have you thought of taking your whole show on the road occasionally in the future? Des Moines State House, Iowa State House, religious event, etc. In D.C., each of you was slightly different than usual in your interactions, which with each other were also different, made viewing fascinating.
That last part is why I included this. We've kind of talked about the former last week. That came up. Would we do it? And we said, yeah. But like it just seemed like we were all a little punchy and quieter, but it seemed like us. But that's interesting that they think we were somehow interacted differently.
Yeah, I think that... we had just been through an entire rigmarole together. I mean, we went to the White House having no idea who we were going to put on the show. I mean, we had no idea, guys. We went halfway across the country. We had no idea who they didn't know. And then the names they gave us did not turn out to be the names that actually were available. I mean, we went there not having a clue how the thing was going to turn out, how much assistance we'd get, anything, And then, so you go through that, and then... and so that required us, to even work more closely together than we even normally do, And then the ordeal at the airport. Are we going to get home? What does this mean for the show in the future? When you hear about, like college basketball teams take those like European trips in the summertime every few years, and the coaches call getting, the team got away and, to an unfamiliar place. And that was kind of a bonding experience. I kind of think that's kind of what that was for our show, because we all get along very well and are very close. But you guys need to understand, when we leave here, most of the time we're gone. I mean, we have our own families, our own lives, and we are just, really focused on those things. And this was maybe the most prolonged interaction with each other we've ever, been compelled to have without any of those other interruptions. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'd be in favor of doing more of it in the future. I just don't know technically, Aaron, how difficult that kind of stuff is to pull off. We had our ace engineer, Rob Chickering, with us, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
And then you were able to MacGyver us at the airport, too. So, more questions in a moment. Maybe you've heard of it. Ivermectin mebendazole. It's the medication that is all over your social media feed maybe right now. It's a mix of two meds, two incredible medications, by the way. They've been around for years. We even gave a Nobel Prize to ivermectin back in 2015 before it had to be labeled as horse paste, right when maybe you might need it the most. Well, now there's some talk that combining it with mebendazole, that it can be used maybe to help detoxify the body, to help it fight the battle against cancer. Our good friend Megan Basham recently posted on her X feed about this, and she's doing conventional medicine too. She's throwing everything she can, at her current battle with cancer. And she mentioned, even before she had her surgery, she had very positive test results after incorporating this into her curriculum against cancer. So, again, no promises, but we believe that you're an adult and you're free to make these kinds of decisions for yourself. And if you want to make this decision right now, our friends at Jace can be there for you with a 90-day supply of compounded ivermectin and mebendazole. They'll get it to you the fastest and most important, most affordable option that is out there, 35% less than where you're going to find it everywhere else. And you'll get a discount at checkout with the code DACE when you go to jace.com. That's JASE, code DACE at checkout for the discount at jace.com, code DACE. And yes, you can still get the standard the standard Jace case and the expanded one with the most customizable options for you and your loved ones as well, and still get the discount with the code DACE at checkout at jace.com.
Next, we will go to Raw Dogger of Air.
I love this name, by the way.
Last week, a modern Protestant Council of Nicaea was needed. I couldn't agree more. Who would be our Nicholas?
I volunteer myself as tribute.
Seconded.
I'm not comfortable playing and being cast in any formal apostolic role like the previous questioner essentially asked me to do, okay? But see heretic, punch heretic, at the same time loving kids at Christmas time. That just seems like a job description specifically for me. Or at least one I aspire to. All right? Do not suffer the little children to come unto me. Make heretics at the same time suffer instead. That is a creed that I can support. I can turn that into a life mission. I volunteer myself as tribute.
And I'm obviously speaking this thing into existence. Now people are talking about this. This has to happen. People of good faith on the Protestant side of the American world. I think it would be fascinating. It would be pay-per-view stuff.
In some respects, the people that we've had on the show before from Clear Truth Media and the conference I went and did in Toledo in March, this is kind of what they're trying to do. They call it post-denominationalism, okay? And it's a little bit of what you're describing, which is on the fundamentals, Christ alone, faith alone, we agree on those things, okay? And so, there's the old Baptist line, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, charity. I think that's how it goes. Aaron, does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Okay. They're essentially trying to make that a thing again, okay? And that's kind of how I would define post-denominationalism, which is, we are going to have to agree to disagree on. I don't know. I struggle, man, because, listen, I love me some me. I can get high on my own supply, brother, as much as the next guy. But I got to wonder. I do kind of wonder how a guy how a Twitter egg, and his name is Theobro9946523 with 14 followers, thinks I am here to referee a fight between John Wesley, John Calvin, Martin Luther, and the Azusa Street Revival.
Infallible men all, right?
Yes. While at the same time proclaiming sola scriptura. I don't know how that works, man. I that's a user achievement of ego I have yet to unlock. But listen, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. Okay? I just fail to see what is sola scriptura by I am the referee. Have you thought about becoming Catholic? I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you want a referee, we've got a room for that, guys. All right? To me, the dumbest thing is to be a Protestant and then demand that you have a Catholic-like ecclesiastical, practices of, go do the real thing then. I don't understand that.
This has been a really good show.
I don't understand that. It makes no sense, which is why, how many of these do you see me participate in?
Oh, it usually has to get to that level where Steve has, I can't not, it's so dumb.
It's so dumb. I have to address it.
Do something.
Because I need to see if I can fix it. And then I make my own. I need to see if I can fix it. Yes. No. Yes. I'm now doing it. I'm doing it to me now. All right. Goodness. Let's move on.
Jesse Thomas says, even with the myriad issues we have as a country, Jesse, good job using myriad correctly there. Even with the myriad issues we have as a country, where would you put the Islamic invasion of America in order of importance? The people are here to conquer, not assimilate, in my opinion.
I don't think you can say that about every single Muslim, but I think you can say that about Islam as a general construct, because we have, 1,400 years of history that indicates that is the consistent thread here.
When they tell you who you are,
yes,
they are.
And
believe them.
I would
Yes.
think 1,400 years of a consistent thread and trajectory of evidence would be indicative that past history is usually indicative of future performance. Okay. Nevertheless, we still have to love our neighbors. We love ourselves. Okay. Muslims don't. That's not in there. They don't have it even remotely close to that, but we do. And our Lord even said it was the second most important thing we could do with our entire lives. So we don't get to just broad brush people. We don't just get to label someone automatically as part of a collective other because they may even belong to something that has the demonstrated strain of hostility towards the West that Islam has demonstrated from its very inception. So I think that is a very important distinction to make. And we cannot make it enough, guys. Because as important as Western civilization is, there was a kingdom of heaven before there was a Western civilization. There'll be a kingdom of heaven long after one is gone. There was a hell before there was a Western civilization. There will be a hell. I don't know, depending on how you view the end times. But there's a reasonable chance there'll be a hell after Western civilization is gone. So we are not provided the benefit ever is a tough word, but we are not provided the benefit ever of not thinking eternally as believers. So I need to make sure that is stated very, very clearly. We're not here to repeat the previous generation's mistake of loving your neighbor as more important than loving the Lord your God with your heart, soul, strength, and mind. But I am not going to be a part of a new generation's mistake of we don't have to love our neighbor as we love ourselves at all. That's not true. That's just the same heresy. We just flipped a coin. A bunch of soft-headed boomers that came out of the 60s and the Jesus people movement were in search of an ecclesiology that allowed them complete non-confrontationalism while building, extremely wealthy bases of support at the same time, not coincidentally. And they found it by just removing the first commandment. Well, over my dead body and a staticky microphone, will I sit here with one of the largest platforms that speaks to the church in America that America currently has and say nothing while a new heresy emerges that says, in interest of the culture war, we don't have to love our neighbor as we love ourselves? No. Nope. I'm not going to agree to that either. Now, with that said, however, as a disclaimer, but I don't know what you guys think. I think that's a very necessary disclaimer that probably needs to be reset over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay. With all that being said, the influx of Islamism is the symptom, not the disease. It is the symptom, not the disease. Nature abhors a vacuum. So now listen, you have to treat symptoms like, what's the name of that city in Texas? Don't let any of that crap happen, okay? If you let symptoms just continue to grow, they'll kill you, right? So you have to treat the symptoms, or stop them at least, acknowledge them. But ultimately, the issue is Islam is metaphysically stepping into corridors that the Church of Jesus Christ in America said, peace out, pour one out, okay? So the advent of Islamism in the West is the symptom, not the disease. The disease is in the Church of Jesus Christ. That's where the disease is at. And that just metastasizes to the rest of the culture that it was called to disciple and teaching them the commands he has given us.
Next, we go to Adam. If we sin because we inherited this sin nature from Adam, different Adam, how is it that Adam sinned who had no sin nature and was perfect?
Big Adam, because Adam, now this is a great question. We'll get to more of this. Not that the other ones were, so no offense was intended there. But this is where we'll get to more of this as we get further into Romans, okay? But Adam, I would argue that Adam was truly, as we understand free will in the West, Adam and Eve were really the only human beings who truly, truly had free will. Meaning that they were not disposed to commit evil. And their will was not fallen or tilted or tainted in a direction towards craven, base impulses, desires. They had true free will, made in the likeness and image of God, untainted by sin. And so God, notice that God created human beings and not robots. So they were given a choice. They could choose the names as part of their dominion. They could choose the names of the animal phylum, of the animal kingdom. They were given choice as part of their dominion. And they chose to sin, and therefore are really the only people that's ever really lived who have free will, as I think most of Americans in the West understands free will. Which is that the angel and devil on your shoulder, the light side and dark side of the force. That's what most Westerners think free will means. All right? So by that definition, they would have had that ability because they weren't tainted by sin. I would argue that everyone within the sound of my voice and everyone who has ever lived since them has a fallen will. The limits of how much good you can choose to do is limited by your inherent will because you are born into sin. The limits of how much good you will sustain, limited because you are born into sin. Your ability to fully connect in a strange relationship with your Creator, hindered, broken because you are born into sin. They didn't have any of those things, and they were given dominion. They took that dominion and they chose to sin with it. And that's where we get our fallen will from. Before we wrap this up, our friends at Real Estate Agents I Trust, I want to remind us that in these unprecedented times, and hey, things are pretty unprecedented right now in our neighborhood. Guys, I saw 3 for sale signs in my neighborhood this weekend.
My wife was noticing the same thing about ours.
Yeah, so we're back, baby.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to spread the word that we back up. Okay. I love that. I love that meme. It's one of my favorite ones. All right. Anyway, you want to make sure a lot's changed in the last 5 years since we've all seen multiple for sale signs in our neighborhoods. All right. So you want to make sure you've got an agent that has a good idea what the best practices are, the current trends are, has a track record of success that you couldn't validate yourself. So we did it for you. And that's why we recommend that agent for you at realestateagentsitrust.com. The name says it all. Go there now, buying a home, selling a home. Maybe you're trying to do both. Maybe you're going across the country. Maybe you're going across town. You really want to make sure you get across the finish line, and we'll get you there with one of these agents at realestateagentsitrust.com.
Next, let's go to Critical Thinker, who says, it seems as though the DOJ is unwilling or unable to prosecute anyone guilty of sex or poison jab crimes. What are the odds they're holding their fire until we get closer to the midterms? Sorry, I'm just running out of reasons to be hopeful.
So I thought they just announced 300 pedophiles last week.
That's
or something,
what I thought
right?
too.
Okay. So on the jab front, I think this is derivative of the answer that I gave before. And you have the liability shields, at this, so I don't know the answer to your question. This is one of the reasons why I sent you a text over the weekend to get Joe Ladapo back on. Because I want to know, I am confident that Florida would do whatever is actually capable of doing, and I don't know the answer now. And I want to get those answers for both me and the audience, so I want to ask those questions.
Next, we'll go to Intellect Vault. Do you think the following combined will be enough to prevent the far left from a 2028 comeback? Voter IDs in places like California.
That might do it alone.
Yeah, ending tax dollars funneled to NGOs, deport criminal illegals, empower media sources that practice journalism, defund media propaganda, and lower taxes.
I mean, that would be a mortal wound. I'm not saying you would kill the American left, but I mean, it's out there in need of some serious triage on the battlefield in danger of bleeding out. No doubt about it. That's a tour de force, brother. You nailed it right there. Well done.
And finally this, Jared says, how can one deny the early church fathers and how they functioned without a canonized Bible?
Coming up in the overtime, we have a I forgot what we're going to do in the overtime, actually.
It's going to be tackling Big Pharma.
Oh, it's the... oh, yeah, you're right, the executive order. Thank you, yeah. Trump's executive order on pharmaceutical discounts. So, you know what? Let me be fair to the question. These kinds of questions illustrate why I've said for years the difference between Catholics and Protestants is not theology, it is ecclesiology. Something has to be in charge. Someone will always rule. Something will always be worshipped. Okay, so I don't know the answers to these kinds of questions. I don't. You know, because any answer I give would be an opinion, and those are valuable, and I get paid to give. But I'm not required to give an opinion on absolutely everything either. So. I think we're a biblical worldview show. I think that there is one perfect thing on the earth, and that is the Word of God. And I think, to the best of my understanding, what aligns with that, I am for. To the best of my understanding, what does not, I am against. That's the best answer that I can give. All right, we'll come back tomorrow, I think, after I seriously reconsider letting Todd ever select the questions ever again.
Hey, this is what's left after I weed out all the ones that say, Steve, why did you sell out, man? So trust me, I did you a favor.
Actually, you know, we should just do a bunch of those next week. Let's do that. Just a bunch of, because I would love to see the rationales for these. Okay, let's do that.
Here it comes, tidal wave.
Romans 8:28.